This is the story of how I built the ultimate basic cabinet. You can try this at home. You could be just like me. First things first, go out and buy a fancy track saw. I got a lot of jobs like this coming up. I needed a good one. Unfortunately, I didn't have dust extractor money in that budget, so I had to use my old one. It kind of works. I do have to change the diaper often, and I only inhale about most of the dust. I'm building 3 of these ultimate basic cabinets, and they're going into a retail space. Look at this tool. I had no idea that you could buy well-designed power tools. I thought you get different colors, you get different levels of power, but nothing that looked good and did the job right. My previous qualifications for buying a new tool were simply price and visibility. With the pieces cut down into more manageable sizes, now I can use the table saw and cut these pieces into all the rectangles I need. The cut list is pretty easy. Let's see what we're looking at here. Each one of these little cabinets on the bottom is probably going to have doors, a top, some sides, a bottom, and other support pieces throughout. Plans are available if you can draw a couple rectangles on a piece of paper. For these cabinets, I'm built-in toe kicks. Yep. I think they'll be more versatile this way, and if they ever have to act as a standalone cabinet, then that'll work. I got this radial arm saw off of Facebook Marketplace for around $20. I love it. I think it's going to do the trick for cross cuts until I can upgrade that little baby miter saw in the background. Finishing up the toe kicks with a pool saw, flush trim router bit on the router, a chisel, probably a little bit of X-Acto knife, and then to the table saw to pop the dado stack in so we can get some grooves and get a little bit more support in the bottommost quadrant of the cabinet. That's some great camera work, almost as stellar as your talking work. The dado stack is in, the zero clearance throat plate is in, it's set to 3/4 of an inch wide. What are you doing? And then we'll lower it to 1/4 of an inch tall and run these side pieces through it. Remember, there's a left and a right. Don't do it wrong. Check them. Make sure you didn't do them wrong. Cutting a channel for the back panel is next. Definitely want to do a test piece first, because when you buy 1/4 inch plywood, it's not always going to be 1/4 of an inch. We know this with 2x4s and whatnot, but you would think that if you're looking for a 1/4 of an inch panel, it would be a 1/4 of an inch, but it's not. So cut them, and then we're going to check them to make sure we didn't do them wrong. And they're looking pretty good, so I think it's time to assemble. But before we get to that, it seems as though the shop dog has other ideas. She's never led me astray before, so let's see this out. We're picking up the pace. I think we're on to something. And getting warmer. And we've found the Hudson River. Stupid Hudson River. Idiot Hudson River. Rah, rah, rah. Zutoro, what is this? Now that we've got some supplies, let's head back to the workshop because we got a lot of pocket holing to do. Don't worry about drilling all your pocket holes right now, because you can always take your piece apart and add more pocket holes as you discover you need them. I was able to get my hands on that track saw, but I am definitely not woodpecker wealthy. I do have this little red pecker knockoff clamp set though. They're super helpful. They help keep the panel from falling back down once you've got it set. They help clamp and keep things square. I definitely think that you should try to get your hands on a little red pecker clamp set. This is the only place in the entire build that I used glue. It may have been because I forgot, but also I've got so many pocket holes in this thing that I think it's going to stay together just fine. Meanwhile, it's coming together relatively well. I'm struggling a little bit. I think if it helps, you can use your banger just to bang it. With everything clamped up and glue drying, we can head back over to the table saw. If your dust collection's not that great like mine, you'll have to blow all the dust off your table saw and make sure it gets in your laptop. Once you've pushed all the dust from the table saw into the laptop, we'll close that up, put it aside, and we'll deal with that later. Now back to these back panels. We're going to cut it once this way, and we'll cut it once this way. That's going to give us the rectangle we're looking for. And that rectangle is going to slide right back into that 1/4 inch groove that we made for the back panel earlier. And with that back panel magically installed, we can add this support piece to the top, which has pocket holes and a groove already cut. So we just clamp it down, make sure it's square, throw some pocket screw holes, pocket hole screws in the pocket holes. Okay. One last screw, and this carcass is good. Now we're gonna flip it upside down, get this toe kick face frame bit installed, and more pocket hole screws for the pocket hole holes. We have one more to get in here, so once again, I'm gonna whip out my little red pecker clamp set. And even though they're not clamped in, they help us visualize and make sure that we're set at 90 degrees there. The cabinet carcass is done. Let's move on. Adding some iron-on edge banding to the exposed edge of the cabinet should help class it up a bit. I like this green trimming tool that I got from Temu, but definitely swap the blades out with some better quality blades. What? No. Come on. Attention to detail and precision here will set the rectangle apart from other rectangles. Like Michelangelo as he sculpted the statue of David. I brought out my jewelry toolbox and grabbed some small files because that's all I had in the shop. This is going to give us a nice crisp edge that even Michelangelo failed to achieve with David. With the top of the cabinet looking good with that edge banding, we can clamp it to the top of the carcass. Probably a bit too much. Looks like it's starting to bow in the middle there. So attach it with more pocket hole screws while most likely listening to Born to Roll by Masta Ace Incorporated. To attach it to the front, I'm countersinking some holes so the screws will be nice and hidden. I feel like I could have sunk the screw with a little extra force, but I didn't want to blow out the top of the countertop. As I unclamp, I can see that the bow hasn't completely gone away, so that may explain why one of the cabinets has a slight bow to it. Nonetheless, we've turned all these rectangles into something. Congratulations. You enjoy this. Finally, the shop dog shows up. You're late. What do you want? What's your problem?
Touch my freaking butt, dude.
And with that transaction complete, she's agreed to help us for the rest of the build. Now it's time to measure for the face frame. We can do it now instead of earlier in case any little things change in our build and we get a nice precise face frame. We'll take the stock that we cut up to 1.5 inches earlier and trim those down to what we need for our rails and stiles. I think this old saw is going to continue to be super helpful until I can get that miter saw station built. Dude, elbow. That's good, but we're kind of done with this. Let's do some more pocket holing. And let's appreciate the good company. This is another great use for your little red pecker clamp. This will help keep the four corners square. And once we have the four corners all screwed up, we could take the four corners out of clamps. and then check our four corners against our cabinet. First, I want to see if this grazing little sheep will help test the face frame out. Beautiful. The first drawback of plywood face frames are extra edge banding. We have the face frame done, and now we have to take the cabinet carcass apart so we can add more pocket holes where we didn't think of putting them earlier. By the looks of this dude in the background, it seems as though our face frame is done. By the looks of this guy, seems like he's done too. Nice job, Hotshot. It doesn't fit. What does it have to do with this section? Let's move on. Yes, door time. Oh, I've been holding off on this because I really wanted these front panels to look good, but I had nothing left to do, so I had to make these doors. In this stage of my young carpentry career, nothing frightens me more than dealing with hinges and slides and the fear of making a hole in the wrong place. In my experience, the cheaper hinges seem to work okay. The cheaper drawer slides, not so much. Speaking of cheap, this drill guide, maybe it's going to be good for something, but it is not a drill press. I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels here. I'm fairly certain I'm not using everything correctly, and maybe the drill didn't have enough power behind it. But for $100, you can get a cheap drill press, and I think you're going to get a lot more out of it than you would the drill guide. Let's line these hinges up, punch some holes, screw our screws, and the hinges are attached to the door. Now, getting them onto the cabinet and the face frame will be another adventure. We'll start by playing a little game of solitaire Jenga. Then we'll realize that there are better ways. And ultimately understand the best way. The cabinet's complete. Let's move on to sanding and finishing. The nights grew colder. The end was in sight, but not anticipated. The final sanding and ironing was not so much fun, but with a few distractions, you could make the best of it. When it comes to finishes, I had three choices in the shop: Saf Ecoat at, Natura, and Rubio. Safe Coat's actually been my go-to for a long time. Then the internet told me about Rubio. Ultimately, Natura One Coat seemed like the most economical middle ground here. It's 3 parts oil to 1 part hardener. Don't mistakenly order catheter syringes because they don't have a tip. I've done this incorrectly before, so this is how I like to do it right. Chopsticks help with the dripping and mixing. A spreader is a nice step 2. Scoring pad is a great step 3 to really work it into the grain. This is assuming that you sanded it well and cleaned it well with mineral spirits or something beforehand. Then we'll wait a few minutes and wipe off the excess with a rag. We'll let it cure for 24 hours and try to stay out of trouble in the meantime. You'd think the cabinet would be done by now. We've created the ultimate basic cabinet. There's not even shelf pins to add a shelf. It's not made out of nice wood. Ultimately, it's a cuboid with doors, and you can't get much more basic than that. To put it over the top, I'm installing custom door pulls that are on brand with the Pilates studio where they'll be installed. I ordered these laser cut stainless steel logos from sendcutsen.com. The quality was great. I had to clean them up a little bit, sand them, deburr them, found a way to epoxy some bolts into them. They held up pretty good for a little bit, but they couldn't take the daily beating that the studio gave them. And in the end, I had to hunt down a welder so he can weld them with his weldering tools. I finished them with some spray paint for metal, and they cleaned up nice once they were dry. Marked up the holes on the cabinet doors, drilled some holes, and they were ready for delivery. The shop assistant, who's always there when you need her, jumped in the back to help spot us when we loaded up the first cabinet. I absolutely did not check to see if this would fit in the car, but it just cleared it. With the cabinet loaded up, the tailgate closed, and a tap on the back to make sure everything's secure, we're ready for the install. The team and I were pretty parched after 4 or 5 trips to get everything to the studio. After a union-mandated break, we proceeded to put it all together. I could just sit here and watch her drink water, so you have to as well. After such a hard time, the first time I tried to put these doors on, I picked up this handy jig, and it made installing the doors much easier. In the case that I'm doing it wrong, the shop assistant always has my back. She's so attentive and ready to help immediately whenever I'm holding something that sounds like a pack of shredded cheese. We actually play a lot, but this drama queen is really milking it right now. With the door pulls installed, the ultimate basic cabinets are done. Thank you, shop assistant. I couldn't have done it without you. A few more odds and ends, like installing the ultimate basic shelf and a custom clothing rack. We were able to transform this drab wall into a much more inviting space, thanks to the ultimate basic cabinet and the ultimate shop dog, Emma.
If you made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mom. Mom, when it's done, hit the like button on the bottom. It looks like a thumbs up. Okay? I'll call you. We'll FaceTime. I'll walk you through it. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a fun time making it, and honestly, it felt good to, I don't know, give a shout out to the shop dog. I really miss her.